Sunday's victory over Bromley in the FA Cup third round gave a glimpse of a bright future for Newcastle, but there are certainly some questions to be asked about more senior members of the squad and their future going forward. In this video, I'll look at that and also a new centre-back link that's come out this morning. It's the NUFC Monday Show. Let's get into it. Hello, good morning, welcome back to my YouTube channel, welcome back to the NUFC Monday Show. More transfer talk to come later in the episode, but we're going to be reacting to the FA Cup victory over Bromley on Sunday from St James's Park. Into the fourth round pretty comfortably after a shaky start. Birmingham at St Andrews in the next round as well. With some really good performances, Louis Miley and Will Osula both getting on the score sheet was absolutely huge. Anthony Gordon coming off the bench to score a penalty as well. After Cameron Congreve scored in the first 8 minutes to put Bromley ahead, sent 3,000 Bromley fans absolutely wild. There was a good feeling about the game, but Newcastle had a job to do, which they did comprehensively in the end. Miley's goal was fantastic. Will Osula getting on the score sheet is absolutely huge as well, and that gives as I said in the intro, a glimpse of something that can come good. Newcastle have Miley, who showed last season that he was definitely good enough for the first team picture and challenging. I think he's certainly above Longstaff in the pecking order now. He's had difficulty with injuries this start of the season that just hampered him. That often happens with young players. Osula has had a bit of the Lewis Hall treatment where he's not been getting the chances that maybe we thought he would and maybe should when Isak's been injured and Wilson's been injured earlier in the season. Anthony Gordon played up front as the third option. And Osula getting his goal, I know it was against a lower league opposition, but it'll really help his confidence because his overall play has been good whenever he's played. He holds the ball up well, he runs the channels, he's a physical presence and a focal point. And I've made the case on this channel that he should be used before Gordon for that very reason. Yes, his goal-scoring prowess at the top level is not there yet, but he offers something physically and in terms of allowing the team to play a structured way, similarly to when Isak plays. He's not exactly the same type of player, he's more physically imposing and not as technically gifted, but he offers that focal point and that ability to play off him, which I think means that for me he should get more opportunities that he's been getting. I don't think he's ready for the Premier League. I do understand Eddie Howe's reluctance to put him in certain games. Obviously the Lewis Hall trajectory shows that that's right, but it's a really good performance from him and a really good moment for him going forward. There were some difficult performances in this game though, and there's some negative aspects of the game, obviously going behind and the slow start, which you could argue was expected because it was a very much a changed side. Players who haven't played for a long time, haven't played together for a long time. It was always going to take a little bit of time to gel, as it did, but Matt Targett wasn't particularly great, Miguel Almiron wasn't particularly great, and Harvey Barnes, which is probably the most alarming thing, wasn't great either. First of all, we'll talk about Targett and Almiron. I think they are very much in the camp of being just it only being a matter of time until they leave. Almiron played, so other players got a rest. No Jacob Murphy in the squad. Matt Targett was the same. No Lewis Hall as well, which was a huge positive because it gives them a rest for Wolves. But the fact that those players didn't take the game by the scruff of the neck and Barnes is in this as well meant that Anthony Gordon had to come on at half time. Bruno Guimaraes had to come on at half time, which Eddie Howe probably wouldn't have liked to have done, given that they played Wolves on Wednesday at St James's Park. So there was a real sort of sense, I think, here of an opportunity for Harvey Barnes though, because he's very much seen as a first team player. He cost Newcastle £38 million in the summer of 2023. He absolutely has the ability to become a first team player regular, but the issue is when he doesn't score goals or assist any goals, what's his output on the team, what's his impact on the team when he plays? There's more evidence of quite a poor one actually, and I think that is a serious point. Leicester fans did make the point when he arrived at Newcastle that when he doesn't score goals, he doesn't do much else, and that's obviously not been an issue for Harvey Barnes. He's one of Newcastle's top scorers this season. He scored goals early on in the campaign as well when they needed him because they weren't playing particularly well. He scored big goals last season against West Ham and Luton, so he's sort of been there when called upon, certainly. But yesterday there was a real opportunity and he didn't take it. This is where the reality sort of has to bite because PSR is such a a noose around Newcastle's neck still, even though it's not as urgent as it was maybe last year. Barnes is a player who has a lot of value against his name. I don't think people thought that 35 million was overpaying for him. I think the question was more over whether he was needed because it was two left midfielders on top of Gordon, and it's left obviously the void at the right hand side, which is still there, that Jacob Murphy's currently filling very well, but it still needs to be filled by a quality player. That's what the club believes as well. You would imagine there'll be plenty of interest in Barnes. You would imagine there'd be good value on Barnes' head as well. But this is an opportunity that he just didn't take, I thought, and he needed to really, because he's not going to make that left-hand side position his own really, because of Anthony Gordon's form and his standing in the club now, and the fact that he signed that new contract. He's Newcastle's main man on that side. But there's the right-hand side position as well. He could come in and cause some problems down there. We were told that he could play on the right. That just hasn't happened in recent weeks. Anyhow, was asked about Harvey Barnes' future last week and said he still is very much part of his plans, and I'm not advocating for selling Barnes now, and I'm not necessarily saying that he doesn't have a future, but when you've got to consider PSR, when you've got to consider that value that he's got on his head when he plays well and the goals that he scores, but also that he's not taking the opportunity now and not taking the opportunity when it's given to him, then does a serious question need to be asked about his overall future in the long term. Maybe in the summer he would be an asset. Newcastle have to look at potential assets to sell. They've talked about Miguel Almiron. They've talked about Matt Targett quite a lot. Callum Wilson, if he were fit, would be on this list. Martin Dubravka's been discussed about an exit, but that's now looking like he's going to stay because there doesn't seem to be any real PSR benefits. Newcastle haven't sold well enough in the past. They've bought very well overall. Barnes is the only question mark. Maybe they have to bite the bullet and sell Barnes in the summer or at some stage to maybe balance the books a bit. And that might sound like a very drastic reaction to one performance, but it's not one performance. It's the latest chapter in Barnes' Newcastle career, which has been, yes, he scores goals, yes, he has an impact when he comes off the bench, and in an ideal world when PSR isn't a problem, that would perfectly suit Newcastle, but he wants to play. PSR is there as an issue and there's value on his head. And he's not taking games like Bromley at home in the FA Cup that scruff of the neck. That's a question that seriously needs to be asked, and I wouldn't be surprised if, despite what Eddie Howe says, because Eddie Howe never openly says that he wants to sell anybody really, maybe with the exception of Ryan Fraser the season before last, but there is a reality check with Harvey Barnes, and I wouldn't be surprised if the club do have him in mind for a potential sale in the summer, because he just doesn't look like he's going to be able to make it as a first team player at Newcastle, simply because Gordon is there. It's not a question of his quality, because Barnes has shown that he's good enough for Newcastle's first team at different points, but in terms of what he brings, the value he's got on his head, but also what he maybe doesn't bring when he isn't scoring goals, maybe it's just a perfect storm in terms of that he has to go at some point in the near future. I don't know, but it'll be really interesting. I'd love to know what you think in the comment section below. Should Newcastle look at selling him in the summer for PSR reasons? Obviously Almiron and Targett, two other players who didn't really make much of an impact. Lloyd Kelly as well, he struggled, he gave the ball away a couple of times yesterday. So some senior players have shown why they're not ready to step in when needed at the moment, and that is a bit of a concern, I think, especially when it comes to Kelly and Barnes, who have been two of the sort of big outlays in different senses. A free transfer with big wages for Kelly and a big transfer fee for Barnes. It was disappointing to see them not really taking the opportunity by the scruff of the neck yesterday to put themselves in the picture for Eddie Howe going into Wolves and beyond, because there's a lot of fixtures coming up, and there's been a lot of fixtures obviously across the festive period as well. But we'll move on to transfer stuff. Obviously we've mentioned Martin Dubravka. A couple of links to talk about is Loic Bardet, a centre-back from Sevilla, French 24-year-old, very much in Newcastle's mould of the ideal centre-back, right-footed, big, tall, strong, quick, good on the ball. Linked in Diario AS in Spain this morning. I take it with a pinch of salt, just because I think Newcastle, with links and names and leaks of those things, is very much not the same way now, because there was a real concerted effort to change that in the summer. So names are difficult to pin down, but he certainly is the right profile of player, which is a real positive. He's played in the back three previously in his career at Lens. He had a really disappointing spell at Nottingham Forest in 22-23, where I don't think he made an appearance. So he's quite underrated, but very much the right type of player for Newcastle. So if this move was to happen, and the valuation is rumoured to be around 20 to 30 million pounds, which again was sort of what we were talked about with Kuzanov, who's just about to sign for Manchester City now. But again, very much the same sort of link, the same sort of profile. Another Paul Mitchell type player that you would imagine could be on the list. So there could be something in this, but I'm not going to comment and say that I know that Newcastle are interested. I'm not going to comment and say that this deal's going to happen, because I think you'll find a lot of links like this over the next few weeks. And if a deal happens, it'll probably happen very quickly and very much out of the blue from our perspective. But definitely the right type of player. Would be a really interesting signing, particularly good on the ball, great passing range, a lot like Botman and Schär, can rake the ball 60 yards quite well. Very good recovery pace as well, which is crucial. Ideal centre-back option for Newcastle. I'm not sure it'll happen. He's been a regular for Sevilla since joining on loan from Rennes. He made that permanent last season, regular since then. But Sevilla are really struggling this year. The 13th in La Liga. It's not been a good time for them since Monchi left to go to Aston Villa. Villa have also been linked with him as well as Liverpool, and he's very much, that shows you what the type of player that he is, because Liverpool, he reminds me a lot of Virgil van Dijk, not at the same level of course, but in terms of what he brings to a team, he might be an ideal option for Newcastle, especially at that price. It would be one worth exploring. As I say, I'm not sure whether it'll happen, but definitely along the right lines, similar to Kuzanov. On the BBC Sport gossip column this morning, it was linked. Newcastle were linked with a move on a free transfer for Dominic Calvert-Lewin. I think that's a very easy link to make. We know Newcastle are interested in him. They spoke to Everton about him last summer. It seems to be very similar to the Jonathan David one, where he's available on a free at the end of the season. It's one that Newcastle might explore and ask the question. But for me, as I said last week, I would absolutely have David over Calvert-Lewin. Calvert-Lewin's age, the fact that he's going to be 28 next season, he's injury prone, he is not particularly prolific at Premier League level, despite what many people say. I think he's only had 1 or 2 seasons where he scored double figures. A decent option behind Isak, maybe, but I think Newcastle need to be making signings that can impact the first 11 and make Eddie Howe make difficult choices, and I don't think that Dominic Calvert-Lewin is that type of player. So I wouldn't go for this, but I can understand if Newcastle are asking the question, because they have a long-standing interest. He's much like Jonathan David, he is on their strikers list, but I don't think that this one would suit Newcastle, in my opinion. Again, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. On Thursday to look back at Newcastle against Wolves with more transfer talk as well. Get in the comment section, like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.